Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast that single-handedly brought down the music industry through home taping. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, and I'm joined by my co-host, Disco Stu Joslin. How are you, Stu?
Hi, mate. Lovely to be with you once again. We're here. It's on a wing and a prayer, but we're here, finally. And we've got Diamond Joe coming on to join us, which I'm really looking forward to as well.
Yes, we're going to be talking about another random chart with Joe. This time we are in January 1991, so there's some gems in there, some odd ones, plenty of mega mixes, and yes, we'll be talking about that in a bit. But before that, this episode is sponsored by Orbit Chewing Gum. If you can hear the sound of me and Stu chewing, that's because we're currently enjoying some Orbit of our own, aren't we, Stu?
Absolutely. I love Orbit Chewing Gum. It really helps me to concentrate and think, come up with my best ideas for the podcast.
Yes, absolutely, me too. And you can pick up some for yourselves, dear listener, at a discounted price thanks to this offer. So go down to your local branch of Happy Shopper and quote the code ALLRIGHT90s to get 10p off a packet of Orbit mint, spearmint or fruit, whichever tickles your taste buds. That's this episode's sponsor, Orbit.
Brilliant. Thanks to the guys at Orbit. Do you remember Orbit for Kids as well? Which was released onto the market, sort of mid to late 90s. Used to be positioned at kids because it had stuff in it that made your teeth stronger and helped you to look after them while looking cool and being able to chew gum. I was a big fan of Orbit for Kids.
Was it in a pink packet?
Yes, it was, and it was pink itself as well. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I do remember that. Excellent stuff. Right, time now for the bulletin board. Stu, have you got anything over there?
I do. Just one thing which has caught my eye this week, and I have to tip a nod of the hat to the Facebook group Discounted Snacks, Nostalgia and Blasts from the Past. There's a chap here who's posted the Radio Times listings for BBC One and BBC Two for the evening of Friday, the 11th of October. Now, I know that we obviously do our children's TV episodes where we've done the listings from time to time, but I just wanted to show you this because this is such a great Friday night here. You can switch between the two channels. So we'll start at 7 o'clock with Muppets Tonight, which I definitely used to watch at the time, which was a Muppet series they were doing at the time. 7:25, Top of the Pops, of course, presented on Friday the 11th of October 1996 by Bear Van Beers, who has hosted quite a few 96 Top of the Pops episodes, which have been on recently. I looked up Bear Van Beers on Instagram a couple of days ago to find out what she's up to now, and I had to go and have a lie down in a darkened room. We'll leave it at that. Then, 8 o'clock, This Is Your Life with Michael Aspel. Obviously, doesn't say who the subject is here, but that was always worth a watch. 8:30, one of my all-time favourites from when I was a kid, Auntie's TV Favourites. I used to love the Bloomers shows with Terry Wogan. He used to do Auntie Sporting Bloomers as well, which were just like sort of cock-up shows. And that really germinated from the Danny Baker tapes, I think, the Own Goals and Gaffs, which I got into when I was young. At 9 o'clock, then, we switch over to BBC Two, where we get Shooting Stars from 9 till 9:30. Tonight's guest panellists are Joe Brand, Gary Rhodes, Russell Grant and Carol Smiley. 9:30, All Rise for Julian Clary. 10 o'clock, Have I Got News for You, with Peter Stringfellow, bizarrely, and Rona Cameron. 10:30 Newsnight, so we can go make a cup of tea while that's on. And then 11:15, Seinfeld, and then you can go to bed after Seinfeld. What a night! What a night! I wouldn't bother going to the pub if that was on now, would you?
No, absolutely not. Remind us what year that was?
That was Friday, the 11th of October, 1996. So 28 years ago as we're recording. Absolutely superb. I just thought that was such a good run of Friday Night TV. I wanted to bring that to you and the listeners.
The only thing I have for the bulletin board this time is that I am currently reading Josh Widdicombe's book, Watching Neighbours Twice a Day. Have you read it, Stu?
I have indeed. I was lucky enough to get it for Christmas a couple of years ago. It's right up our Strasser, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I'm about a third of the way through, and already he's talked about the Amiga, Ghostwatch, and the exact same Tomorrow's World internet episode that we talked about on this pod just a few months
really?
ago. So, yeah, it really is in our wheelhouse, and I'm enjoying it very much. So I recommend it to any other 90s aficionados out there.
Time now for the glorious return of What's the Most 90s, and we're going a little bit abstract with this one, as I ask Alex what he thinks the most 90s colour is.
I'm really torn on this one, Stu. There's two that I'm really stuck between. I'm actually going to ask if you can go first, just because you might have picked one and it would make it easier.
I certainly can. I'm going to open my case with a sound. that a familiar sound to you?
It's a really familiar sound to me, but I can't think what it is.
I'm going to show you. It's from my translucent grape Game Boy Color.
Yes.
This isn't the actual translucent grape Game Boy Color that I had when I was growing up, but it is a translucent grape Game Boy Color nonetheless. My dad sourced mine from the Toys R Us in Bristol while he was having his clutch replaced, Christmas 1998. I'm sure that's come up on the podcast before. But I wanted to go with translucent grape, because obviously it holds such a fantastic memory for me in getting that Game Boy, and it's something that I still play with and use today. But there was such a fashion and trend for translucent things, I think, around that late 90s time, particularly with gaming, and particularly with Nintendo stuff. So the Game Boy, the N64, you could get the N64 console in translucent plastic, you could get controllers in translucent plastic. I always quite fancied the sort of azure blue translucent N64. They go for quite a lot of money these days. So I wanted to go for a translucent plastic color, and because of all the time that I spent with it and the time that I still spend with it now, it had to be the grape. I don't think you really get anything in translucent plastic anymore. It's definitely one from the 90s, and that's why I wanted to go for it. So has that helped you choose at all?
It hasn't, but that is a fantastic answer. It didn't occur to me, but the translucent trend in the late 90s is so perfect. So yeah, great choice. My two choices were, well, before I say my two choices, I think I often see on memes amongst 90s nostalgia social media accounts, lots of people referring to the sort of teal turquoise color that appeared on the disposable cups, paper cups that they got in America. I think the design is called Jazz, and it's like this teal swirl with a bit of purple in it as well. So a lot of people say that is the most 90s color, but I think that's more American, so I haven't gone for that. And I'm really torn between basically anything fluorescent, because obviously that's very 90s, just all the colors but fluorescent. And I would have probably chosen yellow, because I think that's the prime fluorescent color. But I'm actually going to go for that light beige off-white color of computers, fax machines, printers, and basically all 90s electronic devices.
Oh, how evocative is that? How evocative is that?
Yes, I know. Like every monitor, PC monitor and PC stack was this color, and it's died out now. I think they've realized that they can make plastic things in different colors now, and obviously Apple made everything white, and that was cool. Although Apple did obviously have its translucent phase as well, but now it's gone clearly white, and then everything else is black. So this off-white beige thing was everywhere, and it makes me think of my earliest PCs and all my experiences with the Amigas. They were all this color as well, and yeah, it's very much of its time. So I think that is the color I'm going to go for.
I'm going to say two letters and a number, which will mean everything to you and I, and probably nothing to anyone else. T3A.
Exactly. Say no more.
Well, this is a difficult one then. What are we going to put in the ledger?
I think it's going to have to be one of those incidents where we ask the listeners to vote. We'll put it out on our social media.
It really is too close to call, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, we'll put it on our social medias. And even if you don't see that, but you're listening to this episode, just let us know. Joining us today to run down the top 40 from the 15th of January 1991, it's regular guest and resident pop expert. He's the mayor of Music Town. It's Diamond Joe Barter. Joe, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. We're having some technical issues, but we're fighting through it. We've been waiting to start this call for about 15 minutes, but that's Skype's fault, not your fault. And we're going to power through.
Indeed. And it makes a difference from having real life issues. I have to admit, met up with Joe and his partner Fee socially last Friday. We went to see Mark Watson, the comedian, in Chippenham, and I managed to take my good friends Joe and Fee, two vegans, to a chicken restaurant. So I just want to again apologise for that, Joe. That was
it's good to have the apology. Honestly, it's fine. I mean, it's good to have this apology saved now forever. It's going to be available on the internet forevermore.
Right. So, first thoughts on just like a rough idea. When you looked at this chart, you looked at the top 40. What did you both think?
I'll say peppered throughout. Some stuff I really like, but a lot of stuff that, and I was an avid watcher of the Top of the Pops repeats around the early 90s this time. So I've probably heard all of these songs a few times now, and I listened to this chart over the weekend. But yeah, a lot of stuff that I've already forgotten or not a massive fan of. Is that a good? Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, being an early 90s chart, it's one that's not really that familiar to me, having picked up with pop music in the mid to late 90s. And it looks like a real mixed bag of a chart. So there's some hair metal in here, there's dance in here, there's some music which is very much of its time in here. There's a lot of tracks as well which have been re-released or remixed for 1990 or 1991. I don't know if you guys recognize that in the chart, but there's a lot of re-release stuff in here as well, which must have been tie-ins for movies or adverts or things like that. So it's a real mixed bag, this one, and yeah, there's definitely a lot to discuss.
It is nice to see the Grease Mega Mix on the same chart as Anthrax.
Yeah, rubbing shoulders.
Yeah. Right, Stu, shall we do our usual rundown of the top 40 broken down into tens?
Yep, absolutely. And let's go with 40 to 31. Seems like a nice place to start. So moving up to number 40 is Miss America by The Big Dish. Moving down to number 39 is Situation by Yazoo. Moving down to 38 is the EP Jordan by Prefab Sprout. Moving down again to number 37 is Wicked Game by Chris Isaak. Moving up to 36, I'm Not in Love by The Will to Power. New in at number 35 is Satan by Orbital, our favourite trestle table owners and users. Moving up to number 34 is Get Here by Alita Adams. Moving down to 33 is the aforementioned Anthrax with Got the Time. Moving up is A Little Ain't Enough by David Lee Roth. And new in at number 31 is Forget Me Not by Tongue in Cheek. And I'd like to start, if I could please, with a little note on A Little Ain't Enough by David Lee Roth. Late of Van Halen by this point, and who has one of my favourite ever rock music quotes attributed to him. I read this many years ago in a classic rock or something like that. And it's more the context around the quote than the quote itself that always makes me laugh. And myself and Glyn quote this quite a lot. So the quote is, "Always had it, always will have it." And then underneath was written, "David Lee Roth, shortly before he lost it."
I like that.
So that's one that we quote quite often. I looked into A Little Ain't Enough, and it turns out this is the lead single from the album A Little Ain't Enough as well, that was released around this time. And on the Wikipedia entry for this album, it says that by this point in his career, the Seattle grunge scene was rendering David Lee Roth all but obsolete.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like it was very much the downward slope for his career, and he was struggling, wasn't he, to sell tickets for the tour. I think for this album, it said on Wikipedia as well, and I think he basically had to abandon the tour for the final third because he just hadn't sold enough tickets. And frankly, I'm quite glad actually that this sort of music was obliterated by grunge and then later new metal.
I think we might have even discussed this on the podcast before, but it's amazing how all of I've probably said this word for word on the previous episode because we may have done 1991 before, but I feel like you watch any music documentary and they're always like Nirvana, like Smells Like Teen Spirit came out and the world changed forever. But it's amazing for how long you keep seeing hair metal, even though people don't necessarily talk about it now, but certainly watching the BBC4 Top of the Pops repeats, there was a lot of bad hair metal throughout probably 91, 92 for quite a long time.
Am I going to have to come out in defence of this sort of music here?
It's in your blood, isn't it?
I feel like I have to provide some balance. It is in the blood. Yeah, it's in my bloodline.
Yeah.
And people like Glyn would have been buying singles like this, and another one which is even in the top 10, which I assumed was a re-release, but actually it is when it came out, and we'll get to that later on. But like I said at the top, it's a mixed bag of a chart because things were changing. Seattle grunge was coming in, hair metal was on the way out, but it clearly still had enough people behind it to get singles like this into the top 40. Unfortunately, this DLR Meisterwerk peaked at number 32, and then returned from whence it came. But it's nice to see it here, of course. And he's one place ahead of the Anthrax track as well, which is something at least.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Glenn. He's obviously turned off the podcast the moment I said I was glad that this was wiped out, but yeah, it's just not my bag, I'm afraid, Glenn.
It's okay. Listen, we're a broad church here. We're a broad church. We cater for all tastes, but we definitely need to do an episode on Bon Jovi in the 90s. I think we need to focus on these days and keep the Faith albums, and that will really put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Okay. Well, speaking of Anthrax, you mentioned at number 33. I think this might be the first time I've ever actually listened to Anthrax, despite the fact that they're one of the big four of thrash. But yeah, I quite like this song. Like I said, I'd never heard them before, so I wasn't quite sure exactly what to expect. But I definitely preferred it to David Lee Roth. Can you two name the other three the big four of thrash along with Anthrax?
I could have a stab at two. My first guess is Pantera.
You're already wrong. You've lost it already.
I've lost it.
What was the other one you were going to say?
Oh, the Brazilian lads.
All the way from Brazil, it's those lads.
Great bunch of fellas. Sepultura, that's it. Something like that.
Good guess, but it's Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer. They are the big four.
Right.
The big four of thrash. But it's only Anthrax that have represented on the UK Top 40 on the 15th of January 1991. So well done to Anthrax. Chris Isaak, Wicked Game. This is quite a iconic song, isn't it?
I never dreamed that I'd meet somebody like you, and I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you. No, I don't wanna fall in love. No, I don't wanna fall in love with you.
To celebrate Chris Isaak, I've got a Twin Peaks background. I've also got a Twin Peaks hat.
Set
I
dressing.
know. I always bring visual media to your audio podcast, so apologies. Yeah, I like the vibe of Wicked Game, and I'm quite a big David Lynch nut. And I think this song was on the soundtrack to Wild at Heart, David Lynch film as well. So I think it had come out maybe in '89, and then it had a bit of a resurgence, having been in Wild at Heart.
I think it's a sort of unique sound still. Like it really kind of just stands out above all the other singer-songwriter and solo male artist stuff to this day.
Yeah.
And it's clearly influenced a lot of people, I think. Like Lana Del Rey and The Weeknd were two people I thought would be influenced by this song in particular. I don't know what the rest of Isaac's stuff is like, but this track.
No, I think it's possibly the only Chris Isaak song I've ever heard. I don't know if he's in one-hit wonder territory.
Stu cannot believe that you only know one Chris Isaak song.
Oh dear.
Disgusted.
Yeah, I never would have expected that of you, Joe. No, I was just a sharp take a breath there to agree. I'm not aware of any other of his singles, other to say that I covered this a grand total of one time in order to accommodate a singer who was appearing with me at a solo gig. So I have covered Wicked Game, but that's the only sort of interaction I've had with the material of Chris Isaak.
How did it go? Was underwear thrown your way?
No, middling. I've still got the lyric sheet in my little folder just in case I'm ever called upon to perform it again. Middling, I would say.
Can anyone in the building do Wicked Game by Chris Isaak? Quick, make yourself known.
Stu was the doctor on the plane in that situation.
Exactly, yeah.
Forget Me Nots by Tongue and Cheek. I remember talking to Stu about that when the old Top of the Pops repeat was on. I think Stu thought it might be the original song that was sampled by Men in Black, the Will Smith Men in Black theme tune, and the George Michael. Is it Fast Love?
Yeah, Fast Love. Yeah.
But it's listening to it again this week. I think you mentioned this earlier, Stu. A lot of these songs like reek of that kind of early '90s kind of naff dance sound. Whereas if you listen to the Patrice Russian, is it? Original.
Yeah.
Forget Me Nots. It's so good. The 12-inch mix is really good. So my tip is go listen to Patrice Russian and don't listen to Tongue in Cheek.
Yeah, this one is weird, isn't it? It's sort of strangely weak sounding. It's like it's been performed by two slightly shy teenagers at a school talent show. They're not really singing it properly. It's weird. Right, Stu, shall we move on to the 30 to 21 10, as it were?
Let's hear them and see what we got to say.
At number 30, it's 24/7 featuring Captain Hollywood with Are You Dreaming? At 29, it's Always the Sun, the 1991 version, by The Stranglers. Up to 28, it's Box Set Go by High. New in at number 27, it's Can I Kick It by A Tribe Called Quest. At 26, it's a re-entry for Soho with Hippie Chick. At number 25, it's Summer Rain by Belinda Carlisle. 24 is Justify My Love by Madonna. 23 is Total Mix by Black Box. 22, All This Time by Sting. And then up to 21, it's Sensitivity by Ralph Tresvant, who I've never heard of. What's standing out to you there, Joe?
So Madonna, I love Madonna. And is Justify My Love, I think, from the Immaculate Collection, the first Greatest Hits collection, which is an apt title because it is hit after hit. So that's good. Always good to see some Madonna. Love Can I Kick It by A Tribe Called Quest. I think Stuart said before, you don't often see a John Pertwee sample in the top 40. I think the Stranglers song sounded pretty good when I listened to it the other day. Couldn't find Total Mix by Black Box on my preferred streaming service. I assume it's like a kind of mega mix because most of their songs, their hits have come out kind of late 80s, early 90s. So I listened to a couple of Black Box songs. I like the production on those like Black Box singles. I'm not the biggest fan of Ride on Time, but some of the others. Can't say I remember much about that Sting song, so I don't know if it's the most memorable.
We're not going to talk about Sting, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. That's I'm definitely talking about Sting. You hold your horses there, Stu.
Wow, it's all coming out now. Can I go back to Can I Kick It for a moment? As Joe said, excellent John Pertwee sample in there. Has one of the greatest lyrics, I think, of all time. Wipe your feet really good on the rhythm rug. I always enjoy that. Always enjoy that lyric when it comes out. But I am very familiar with this song because of, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, I had a VHS that my granddad had ordered out of the paper for me called Aston Villa, The Pain and the Glory. I've definitely mentioned this on the podcast before. It's on YouTube. You can go and see it. It is there. And it's a selection of Aston Villa highlights and clips set to popular chart hits. And there were different ones for different clubs. So there was like a Nottingham Forest version and a Chelsea version. But there was just some Aston Villa like goals and highlights set to Can I Kick It by A Tribe Called Quest. So when I got that video in about 1996 or 7, that was a song that I really latched onto, and I've always loved it since then. And it always makes me think weirdly of David Platt and Tony Daly. There was another talking of David Platt. There's a selection. There was a David Platt sort of highlight reel set to "Love to Love You Baby" by Donna Summer, and whenever that used to come on, my mum would let me watch the clips, but with the television muted.
Daniel Acton and David Platt, of course, very much the Q-tip and Fife Dog of the Premier League at that time.
Absolutely. R&D Dalian as well.
Yes. And the Ipswich Town version of that video, of course, was just called The Pain.
That's a lovely bit of business.
But in terms of Can I Kick It? Yeah, I mean, Tribe Called Quest, it's such a jam, and they are still one of the most legendary groups in hip-hop history, aren't they? And considering how early this was as well, so early in the decade, they could be forgiven for sounding a bit dated. And, you know, hip-hop in the late 80s and early 90s had a sort of a bit of a basic sound, if I'm allowed to say that. But I think Tribe just still stands up, and I guess it's just testament to how good Q-Tip's production is and everything. But this, it's still so good. It's got such a groove.
Can I kick it? Yes, you can. Well, I'm gone. Can I kick it? To all the people who can quest like a tribe does. Before this, did you really know what I was? Comprehend to the track force, why? Cause getting mentions on the tip of the vibe buzz. Rock and roll to the beat of the funk fuzz. Wipe your feet really good on the rhythm rug. If you feel the urge to freak, do the jitterbug. Come and spread your arms if you really need a hug. Afrocentric.
One more thing, just before we move into the top 20, is that friend of the podcast and former guest of the podcast, Robbie Bryan, once almost became the drummer for Black Box. It never didn't quite happen, but he nearly became the drummer for Black Box. I remember that happening about 10 or 12 years ago. So yeah, there you go.
Well, no, not before we move on to the top 20, Stu, because as I mentioned not but 5 minutes ago, we are talking about Sting on this podcast, and I want to foiled again. And I want to talk about All This Time because it's maybe my favorite song on this top 40.
Oh, if you must, go on.
Alongside Can I Kick It, of course. I do like Sting and I like The Police, and I didn't really know this song, but having listened to it a few times in prep for it. Stu, what is that you're doing there? Stu has now got out a book and he is now reading.
Carry on, it's all right.
He's reading along. What is that? Football Manager Stole My Life. He's reading that instead of listening to me talk about Sting. Outrageous.
I actually have this here because it's relevant to a song we're going to discuss later. I'm sorry, please, just my little joke, please. Please do carry on.
Yes, anyway, so I like Sting and I like The Police. The band, of course, I mean by The Police. I have different feelings about the police force, but let's not get into that. Yeah, I think I didn't really know this song, but I really got into it, like listening to it in preparation for this episode. From his third album, The Soul Cages, which deals a lot with his the death of his dad, and this song in particular references that in certain ways. But I like the fact that it's kind of, the music is quite upbeat, but the lyrics are very downbeat because they're about his dad dying, and I like that juxtaposition. And I just think he's got a great ear for melody, Sting, and he's got such a unique voice. And this was a real jam, and I've been listening to it quite a lot this week. So I'm going to stand up for him. And it's clearly a battle of David Lee Roth versus Sting on this particular episode, and I'm very much in Sting's corner.
So, would you say this is more A Sting than B Sting?
Oh,
very good,
beautiful.
Very good.
I just thought of that on the spot. I bet no one has ever done that joke before.
All this time, river flows. Father, if Jesus exists, then how come he never lives here?
I feel like I should retract my comments there because, you know, I was poking a little bit of fun, but I didn't realise that was what the song was actually about, and I feel a little bit bad now for having.
I mean, come on.
For having talked Sting down. So please accept my apologies.
One final thing I have to say on "Justify My Love" by Madonna is that it's got such a long Wikipedia entry. This song, it's one of the longest Wikipedia articles I've ever seen for a song. It's mainly to do with the music video, which apparently was so sexy it was banned by MTV. So they had to release it instead on a VHS. And the idea of a VHS single, and it's so 90s, isn't it? Like, I think the ratio of plastic to content with a VHS single is so off. Like, but apparently, like, it sold absolutely loads, and it was the first.
Stu's granddad picked it up for him.
Yeah, out of the paper. Yeah. So what? We're talking like a sort of 3 or 4 minute long VHS.
Yeah, exactly.
With nothing else on it.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It went multi-platinum. Sorry, it was the first short form video to go multi-platinum in the US. So did something right. Just think how much plastic that is now in landfill.
I was going to say, here I am washing out my yogurt pots, and you know that business decision back in '91 has probably single-handedly pushed us towards complete destruction in the next 50 years.
Yeah. And washing out my yogurt pots is definitely going to be the episode title.
Hey, if it gets one person to do that, then that's fine. Okay, from 20 to 11. Up to number 20 is Preacher Man by Bananarama. Down to number 19 is the 1990 version of You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. Up to number 18 is All True Man by Alexander O'Neill. Down to number 17 is Mary Had a Little Boy by Snap. Down to 16 is Pray by MC Hammer. Up to number 15 is X, Y and Z by Pop Will Eat Itself. Staying where it is at number 14 is the 1990 release of Crazy by Patsy Cline. Up to number 13, All the Man That I Need by Whitney Houston. Up to number 12, Mercy Mercy Me and I Want You, double A side by Robert Palmer. And finally, up to number 11, I Can't Take the Power by Offshore, which actually made me laugh quite a bit when I saw that. You know, there's some sort of joke about offshore power in there, isn't there? But I can't quite put my finger on it.
There's not a whole lot in this 10 for me that really stands out. I didn't know a lot of it, or very much of it at all, apart from obviously the covers. The Whitney Houston song, I think she can make anything sort of sound at least listenable, and she's got, it's another great vocal performance from her. I Can't Take the Power by Offshore. I can't find anything about Offshore on the internet at all. Like if you click on them on my preferred streaming platform, you click on them as a band, it's just this one song. So I don't know who they are, what went on, but I really quite like this song. I think it's kind of a listenable and kind of low key but cool early 90s house track, and I might add it to my my playlists.
Can I just interject here and ask, why do we keep saying my preferred streaming service? Have we finally got the money through from Apple Podcasts and we're not allowed to say anymore? Is that it?
Sorry, I should have told you that before we started recording. Yeah,
right,
so
okay.
you can't. I'll have to beep that out now. You've said that.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, we don't want to annoy the lawyers. Yeah. There's one thing in here for me, which is at number 19. You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. And I only want to mention this because, Alex, I think it's your turn in the high security edit suite for this episode. I insist, if there is one thing that comes out of this episode, I insist you play the Paul Shane version of You've Lost That Loving Feeling at this point in the episode right now for everyone to enjoy.
Oh, that loving feeling. You've lost that loving feeling. Now it's gone, gone, gone. Baby, baby, I'll get down on my knees for you.
Are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Joe, are you familiar with this? You must be.
You said the other day that you were going to tell Alex to do this.
I've been
talking all week about it.
So this is it's a famous clip. Paul Shane was an actor who was in Heidi High and things like that.
Oh yeah, I knew that guy.
Yeah. And in the mid-90s, he was on some sort of tour where he was like singing the classics, and he got a slot to promote this on Pebble Mill, which was the popular lunchtime show at the time. And this clip of him singing "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" then subsequently kept getting played on shows like Shooting Stars and things like that because it is hilarious. I think it might be my favorite ever clip on the internet of all time. It is superb.
Baby, baby.
I've added it to the old watch later on YouTube. I'll check that out later.
Let me know.
You might have to cut this out because this is quite disgusting. But also, and I don't want to make Alex feel left out as if it was like a love-in, because I actually saw Stu in person the other day. But we ended when we parted ways. Stu was talking about Bobby Davro falling over in the stocks, which obviously no laughing matter.
Oh, Bobby! Oh,
I've
Christ!
watched the clip.
Yeah.
I've watched the clip so many times in the last few days. Actually, it pops up in Inside Number 9 in the live episode of Inside Number 9, so I had seen it before.
Okay.
And as Stu told me, it pops up it was never broadcast at the time, but it was used in BBC training videos. Obviously, I don't like the idea of someone falling over when they're trapped in stocks. But Keith Chegwin definitely makes that video. So I've got to thank you for bringing that back into my life, Stu, this week.
Oh, not a problem. It was an absolute pleasure.
The moment Stu said that was his favourite clip on the internet, I was just about to say, and my favourite is Bobby Daffro falling over in the stock. So I'm glad you brought that up.
That's number 2 for Stu.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Oh, Bobby! Oh, Jesus! Stop! Don't do the thing!
I might shock you with the ones I want to talk about from this list, because I love Preacher Man by Bananarama. Like, I imagine that's them past their prime. I don't know if that's like Stock Aitken and Waterman, but I really like Preacher Man. Again, something else that stood out to me on Top of the Pops repeats a few years ago. And also MC Hammer, Pray, which I believe is one of the few times that Prince allowed someone to sample When Doves Cry, or allowed someone to sample any Prince song. This one samples When Doves Cry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if MC Hammer, did people think he was like naff at the time with the big trousers? Yeah. It'd be good to know what public opinion was like of MC Hammer at the time. But yeah, I genuinely really like Pray.
Yeah, I think I wonder the same about MC Hammer, because I've never really taken him seriously, but I obviously wasn't listening to music when he was first around. And Hammer Time is so ubiquitous and just naff, and like I would happily never hear that song ever again. So it's hard not to just distill his career down to that one song. Yeah, I do really like the Prince sample in this song. is cool and it works really well. I think as a lyricist, he's not the best. He's mainly just says we need to pray just to make it today, which is not a great line to, let alone to sing once, let alone to.
I think Oscar Wilde wrote that, and MC Hammer sampled
that. Yeah, he's clearly very proud of it because he says it so many times in this song.
Okay, Alex, we finally made it. What are the biggest sellers from the 15th of January 1991?
Okay, at number 10 we have, and this is a rare example of the pre-brackets in the song title. It's brackets I've Had the Time of My Life by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. At number 9 it's Bring Your Daughter ... to the Slaughter by Iron Maiden. At number 8 it's All Together Now by The Farm. Number 7 is International Bright Young Thing by Jesus Jones. Number 6, down from number 1, is Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. Number 5 is 3am Eternal, which is the KLF featuring the Children of the Revolution. Number 4 is The Grease Mega Mix, which is John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Number 3 is Gonna Make You Sweat, which is C&C Music Factory featuring Freedom Williams. Number 2 is Crazy by Seal, and at number 1 it's Sadness Part 1 by Enigma.
I'm going to start with International Bright Young Thing by Jesus Jones. Local lads, Bradford-on-Avon, Jesus Jones, Bradford-on-Avon's finest. And this is why I have the wonderful tome here, Football Manager Stole My Life, because there's only one thing I know about Jesus Jones apart from the fact that they are from Bradford-on-Avon. And I want to read you a passage here from Football Manager Stole My Life. So this book is about the history of Championship Manager and then subsequently Football Manager. And this is a passage by Miles Jacobson, who is currently the head at Sports Interactive, who produced the game, but used to be an A&R man at Food Records. Okay, and just to give you some context, Domark is the company here who formerly published Championship Manager. So this is Miles Jacobson. I had friends at Domark and I'd been mucking about with some data updates anyway for the game. I'd been talking to Domark about doing a Jesus Jones game. I was working in the music industry and Jesus Jones at the time were massive. The Domark guys wanted to see Blur play and I gave them a couple of tickets. In return, they put me in touch with the makers of Championship Manager. So, we might not have had the world's greatest ever football management simulator. We might have had Jesus Jones the game. And just for swapping of a couple of Blur tickets, Football Manager then just germinated from there. So really, I've got Jesus Jones to thank for over 20 years of wonderful obsession.
That's such a strange link, but yeah, it's really paid off for you.
Absolutely. I mean, when I saw they were in the chart, I thought, geez, I'm sure there's something in that book about Jesus Jones. And I went down to get it, and yeah, there you go. And like I say, local lads as well. So it's good to see some Wiltshire interest in the chart. The song that I identified earlier as one that I thought was a re-release, but was actually released at this time, was the track in at number 9, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter by Iron Maiden. So again, this is another heavy metal track in a chart that is dominated by music that is by and large not heavy metal. But even, I mean, we're up to 1996 now with the Top of the Pops repeats, and bands like Bon Jovi, Def Leppard still turn up with alarming regularity. So it did go on for quite a bit longer than 1991, having those sorts of bands still bothering the top 40. I think even Thunder might have made a recent appearance, if I remember correctly. So nice to see the Maiden in there at number 9 as well.
I reckon if you put a gun to the head of almost anyone and said, did Iron Maiden have a top 10 single in 1991? Most people would say no.
Be a lot of dead people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's surprising how late
A lot
this
of
was.
slaughtered daughters.
Oh, and yeah. You're on fire tonight, mate. You really are.
This is the only Iron Maiden song I know, so I am surprised that it's so late. It's a great example of ellipsis used in a song title as well. There aren't many of them. This is one of the finest. The song's okay, but it's not my genre. Ice Ice Baby. We've already talked about MC Hammer, and staying with the slightly naff rappers. Do we think this stands up at all?
All right, stop. Collaborate and listen. I sit back with my brand new invention. Something grabs a hold of me tightly. Flow like a harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know. Turn off the lights and I'll glow. To the extreme, I rock a mic like a vandal. Light up a stage and wax a chump like a candle. Dance. Caress the speaker that
I'm not a fan, and again, it would be interesting to know what people thought at the time. I feel like I keep talking about the Top of the Pops repeat, but I feel like he was maybe quite a good dancer when this song was on Top of the Pops a lot, and I think I thought then, like, I wonder if people did think it was good at the time.
An uncredited use of Under Pressure, the sample, and therefore Vanilla Ice didn't get very much money at all for it. But also famous because this led to the infamous dangling over the balcony incident. Have you heard about this with Suge Knight?
No, I don't think I have.
No.
Joe, of course, you'll know. Suge Knight, the former boss of Death Row Records, the infamous early
Aware of
90s.
Suge Knight. Not because I'm a criminal or anything. I don't know why you think I'm associating with Suge Knight.
No, nobody said you were. The man, he doth protest too much.
I remember you spending a lot of time in Southern California in the early 90s, Joe, so
he was always away from primary school. In Southern California. Yeah, absolutely. It's all starting to make sense now.
Yeah, and I'm sure you get mentioned in the liner notes of All Eyes on Me, the Tupac album from 96, Joe. So something was going on.
I was paying his bail when I was 7 years old.
Yes, yeah. Well, someone was paying
money.
So Suge Knight was the boss of Death Row Records, and there was someone who was on Death Row Records, another rapper, who claimed to have helped co-write Ice Ice Baby and get no royalties or credit for it. And so Suge Knight visited Vanilla Ice a couple of times, culminating in him visiting Vanilla Ice's 15th floor studio apartment and threatening him physically by dangling him over a balcony, apparently by his ankles, although I think that's maybe apocryphal and it was just pushing him over the edge of a balcony. But I prefer to picture the dangling by his ankles because that's much more cartoonish. But just trying very firmly to get some royalties for that songwriting. I don't know if he was ever successful. I don't think he was because I think all the royalties had already gone to Queen by that point. But yeah, so just a nice bit of trivia, I think, from that. And also another thing was that on MTV, they retired this song in 1999 because they'd apparently played it so much. So they had this sort of ceremony where they got Vanilla Ice onto this program and asked him to smash up the master with a baseball bat, but Vanilla Ice instead just smashed up the whole studio as well as the tape, and it's slightly cringe-inducing. It's on YouTube. We'll put a link below, but it's just another thing that makes me think of this track.
Right, let's just get this ranking correct. So it's
We can't.
Paul Shane performing "You've Lost That Love and Feeling," Bobby Davro in the Stocks, and then Vanilla Ice smashing up the MTV studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, that's our top three. So the song that's above Ice Ice Baby, 3 AM Eternal by the KLF. I think this probably comes up every time we speak about the KLF, but is this around the time that they fired blanks on the audience at the Brits and then left a dead sheep outside?
So there was a year in the early 90s when they were the biggest selling singles band. So I imagine that would be 91. And then I think at the 1992 Brit Awards is the incident you're talking about, where they performed this song, but they performed it with
Extreme Noise Terror.
Extreme Noise Terror.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they performed a kind of much heavier version, and shot like a machine gun into the audience, blanks obviously, and I think they left a dead sheep outside or at the after party. Something that said the KLF has left the music industry, and I think that was it for the KLF. I think they deleted the back catalogue, so all of the stuff was really rare and expensive for many years, and it's only in the last couple of years that stuff has gone on streaming services. So I'd say that's an ideal career trajectory. Have some absolutely massive hits and then go away. They only released like 3 songs, didn't they? But they released like 1 million versions of each one. Yeah, all of those early 90s KLF singles are pretty untouchable for me. I like the aesthetic, the videos, they'd always have like loads of people on stage at Top of the Pops. They'd be in great elaborate costumes. Yeah, I think the KLF are amazing.
This is one of only 3 or 4 songs that Absolute 90s appears to have access to, and it's why I had to stop listening to the station, because I would hear 3 AM Eternal about 4 times a day if I was listening to it. That's not to say I don't like 3 AM Eternal. It's just that, I do like a bit of variety. Sometimes you want to hear A Little Ain't Enough by David Lee Roth. You know what I mean?
Or the Paul Shane version of You've Lost That Love.
Baby. I hope that makes sense. I hope we dropped it.
I would like to know why I've Had the Time of My Life is in the chart, because is Dirty Dancing a few years before that? Is this the one from Dirty Dancing?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thought that I had was that maybe Dirty Dancing had been shown on television for the first time at Christmas 1990.
That was my guess.
Possibly.
Yeah, especially Christmassy. I've actually never seen what I read the other day is a perfect film, Dirty Dancing. Never seen it.
It's good. I think it's very good.
I quite like Gonna Make You Sweat. But I was listening to this on Saturday. I listened to this chart in the car with my partner, the aforementioned Fiona, and she said that it is not a pleasant noise to listen to. So make of that what you will. However, Crazy by Seal, we both enjoyed it. That's a kind of undeniable hit.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. No, we're never gonna survive unless we are a little crazy.
It absolutely is. And one thing, I didn't want to talk about the song as great as it is. I wanted to talk about the album cover. You can see it on the chart page that we use. That sort of black writing on a white background with Seal himself making the A of his name. And seeing that album cover takes me straight back to the CD section of Woolworths in Chippenham, mid-90s, because that album was always present. And I hadn't seen that cover for a long time, and it really did. It was a Proustian rush that took me right back there, just seeing that album cover again. So, yeah, that's always going to make me think of Woolies in Chippenham.
R.I.P. And I guess we can't put off talking about the Grease Mega Mix for much longer.
Are you sure we can't?
Don't make me get the book
Would
out
you?
again.
Or do you
I mean,
want to talk about number one first and save Grease Mega Mix for last?
No. Well, I had a quick thing to say actually about Gonna Make You Sweat. This is such a sort of famous, ubiquitous song. It almost represents dance music as a whole. I'm sure it just gets used on everything. I'm sure it's been used in The Simpsons at least once, and it's so recognizable. But I had no idea. I couldn't have told you who performed it or even what it was called, because it isn't called Everybody Dance now. But it's so famous and so recognizable.
Yeah, is it in Madagascar? He said the film, not the place.
Probably. Yeah.
But you're right. We're obviously all too young, but it's strange to imagine a time before Gonna Make You Sweat existed.
Yeah.
It feels like it's always been there, and it again is something that kind of seems like a joke. Like it's the go-to dance song. So what was it like when it first came out? Did people actually think, oh, this is that? I mean, obviously people thought it was good enough to pay for it and make it be at number 3 in the chart. So yeah, we also need a time machine and travel back to January '91 to see the public reaction to some of these songs.
Yeah, we need like a sage Generation Xer in the corner of the studio who we can just sort of occasionally turn to and say, what was life like when this came out?
Yeah.
And they're going to tell us.
Why was the UK completely obsessed with mega mixes?
Yeah, exactly.
Please, somebody tell me, please.
What secret had Jive Bunny tapped into?
So with if we're going to talk about it, we might as well. The Grease Mega Mix, a staple of the primary school disco during this time. Always, absolutely always. And like I say, I mean, I've got a couple of highlights from below the number 40 line, actually, which I'll just cover at the end. There's a Jive Bunny mix in about number 55 or somewhere like that. So it really is boom time for mega mixes in 1991. And I think probably, again, this has to be a link in with either a television or a VHS release, maybe. Probably a VHS release of Grease, because it definitely would have been on television by 1991. But maybe, a VHS release for the first time, maybe for the Christmas market. And that's probably why this was released. That could be bollocks, so I don't know.
I think just really easy money for the record labels, wasn't it? Just put this out. It's already recorded and everything. Just stick it out, and it'll sell enough to get it in the top 10, for God's sake. So, yeah. Right, come then. Let's finish off by talking about the number 1, Satanist Part 1 by Enigma. Apparently Part 2 didn't come out till 2016, so a really long time waiting for that sequel. I don't know if they knew there was ever going to be a sequel or why they called it Part 1, but it's a strange song, isn't it? Definitely.
It's a slow burner, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's this sort of dance baroque hit with some panpipes as well. Very odd mixture of cultures and time periods. And yeah, surprisingly it got to number 1.
Well, it had even moved up from number 2 the previous week as well. So clearly there was some sort of groundswell of sales behind it.
Was it number 1 for quite a while as well? I feel like it was number 1 for a while.
I can give you the run of its chart placings with its weeks on the chart. So over 12 weeks between December 1990 and March 1991, 27, 6, 4, 4, 2, 1, 3, 6, 13, 20, 27, 48. So it's quite nice that for its journey in the top 40, it started at 27 and it ended up back at number 27 before dropping out of the chart completely. But yeah, only had 1 week at number 1.
It's your classic bell curve.
The classic pop bell curve.
Yeah, but it's not an all-time classic, is it? It's not like some of the number 1s from around this time where everyone still knows them. I think people wouldn't necessarily recognise this song now. So
just a couple from outside the top 40 for this week that I've noticed. So at number 42 was a collaboration between Deborah Harry and Iggy Pop called Well Did You Ever, which I listened to this afternoon, and it's quite a bizarre sort of half singing, half talking back and forth between them. It's definitely worth a listen. Also in there at number 43, The Anniversary Waltz Part 2 by Status Quo, which is a medley of some of their greatest hits to celebrate possibly 30 years in the business, I think, at that time. Number 45, Unbelievable by EMF. Number 47, Twice as Hard by the Black Crowes, which is an excellent song. The most interest, though, comes from number 56 onwards. So number 56 is Saviour's Day by Cliff Richard, which is on a rapid decline after being number 1 on Christmas Day. The previous week it had been number 20, down there at number 56. Number 57 is Geordie Boys brackets Gaza Rap by Paul Gaza Gascoigne, which is receding from its peak of number 31. One for you here, Alex, at number 59, Turtle Rhapsody by Orchestra on the Half Shell.
So that must be a tie-in with a Turtles movie, I'm guessing.
All the research I did suggested that it was on the soundtrack from the TMNT movie, absolutely. But that's down there at number 59. Motorhead in at number 60 with a song called The One to Sing the Blues. And then, yes, here we go. At number 64, the Crazy Party Mixes by Jive Bunny and the Master Mixers. So they are still hanging down there in the lower reaches. Those were my highlights of the also-rans from below the waterline.
Right, to finish off then, shall we each pick our, let's say, 2 favourites, because I don't think it's an all-timer chart, so I think we could probably make do with just 2 favourites each. I'll quickly start with Can I Kick It, of course, by Tribe Called Quest, and I'm going to have All This Time by Sting, because it's the one song that I have discovered that I will continue to listen to, I think, after this.
Yeah, I mean, my head is saying Can I Kick It is probably the best song on this chart. I do have one of my favourite discoveries from watching the Top of the Pops repeats a few years ago was International Bright Young Thing by Jesus Jones, and that's been I've given that quite a few spins in the last few years, so I'll give that an honourable mention. So that's probably my top 2. Maybe Preacher Man by Bananarama, big fan of that.
Well, it's a clean sweep for Can I Kick It, obviously. I think we're all unanimously in agreement there. I'm going to take A Little Late Enough by David Lee Roth, just because I feel like he's been a little bit unloved in this chat and in this chart. So I'm going to take that with a tip of the hat to You've Lost That Loving Feeling, but it has to be the Paul Shane version.
Okay. Well, as always, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for helping us walk through this slightly mediocre top 40, isn't it? It's not the best we've had, that's for sure, but some gems in there. So thank you so much for your usual expertise. And yes, we'll have you back on for the next one, I'm sure. Hopefully it'll be a little bit later in the decade.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again then to Joe for coming on and talking about that top 40. It was a bit of a mixed bag. I think we can all agree on that, but it was still fun nonetheless.
I think whatever chart date we generate when we do these episodes, we're always guaranteed sort of 5 or 6 songs that we can definitely talk about. Like you've got your Can I Kick It, you've got your All This Times. There are definitely songs we're going to have a personal connection to. But no, that was still a fun chat. And I learned something as well, so it can't be bad.
If you have any thoughts on the top 40 we just talked about or any other topics we've talked about in recent months, then please do get in touch in the usual place, which is on our link tree, which is linked to below. So get on there, let us know your thoughts, and we will discuss them on our next episode. So we don't know exactly what we're doing next time, because even though it's a new series, a new start, we've just gone very quickly back into our old routines of not knowing what's on next.
Old habits die hard, mate. Old habits die hard.
Exactly. But needless to say, it'll be carefully thought out and perfect audio quality, and yes, you're sure to enjoy it. So do tune in a couple of weeks and find out what on earth we're talking about. That's about us done for the episode then, I think, Stu. It's goodbye from me. I am just off to dangle over a balcony because they keep stealing all our ideas.
And I'm just off to wash out my yogurt pots while watching my favourite YouTube playlist. Shane, Davro, Ice.
Goodbye.
Until next time.
baby, baby.